Hi, Roger Hill, Wuthering Heights Consulting. We're looking at the Barry Montpelier EF Knapp Airport data. This climatology is almost good completely. We're on the 30th day, of course, today, and we got 29 days of data to take a look at here. The highest temperature so far, 64 degrees. That occurred back on the 24th. That was the warmest day with a mean temperature of 52 degrees. How do you like that? And we've had some cold mornings, of course. Nothing below zero, just 4 above. That was yesterday morning. So the weighted averages are accordingly. Average temperature for the month of November, 33.5 inches, and that's running a little bit over 2 inches below normal, the departure. So a little colder than normal, and that is illustrated by the heating degree days at 904 versus 889. So yes, it did take a little bit of heating, more heating than average for November. But we've had very large roller coaster rides. You notice the 64 degree back on the 24th, and then yesterday morning we had 4 above, but no below zero readings. And the weighted overall average being a little bit below normal. Precipitation a little more skimpier than normal, at least at the EF Knapp Airport. Not everybody is represented well by this, of course, but 1.76 inches at the EF Knapp, and total snowfall has been 15.6 inches. I would say that is above normal, and normal precipitation is 3.17 inches. That's only 56% of normal, so we're running about one half of, just a little over one half of normal. But overall, we've had one of the other things to note here is that just about every other day we've had precipitation. So, and that's kind of typical front-loaded winters, typically in sometimes October, but a lot of times in November, and very frequently into December and January. You get precipitation bouts. It may not add up to very much, but you get a little bit here, a little bit there, just like either every day or every other day. So the concentration is that it seems like it snows a lot. Of course, it keeps road crews busy and trying to keep those highways and byways clean enough for you to travel on. So it's a real headache and kind of what we call nuisance snow showers or flurries. And this is kind of the name of the game, and indeed, November has been that way. But last but not least, of course, 62 hundredths was the big precipitation maker on the 26th, and it produced 10.5 inches, rounded up 11 inches of snowfall with the storm, the coastal nor'easter, that caused a lot of power outages in a few spots down to the south and east of our region, and especially parts of Massachusetts and into New Hampshire and Maine. And we have a pretty good Arctic outbreak that's in the process of coming down from Canada. This trough of low pressure, this is the 500 millibar chart here. These yellows showing the heights of at 500 millibars are about 18,000 feet. You can see the temperatures here well below normal, making a track headed toward the Dakotas. And of course, those temperatures below zero here are pretty impressive into the Dakotas. And there's a cold front right along this area, and this is going to be tracking into our neck of the woods, but not until it warms up first. We're looking at warmer air squirting in out ahead of that. And here's one of the more trusted computer models, but this is this morning. Note here, this is quite amazing. We're looking at some very, very cold temperatures. This is at 925 millibars, so it's elevated a couple thousand feet above surface. So temperatures here are even colder than what you're seeing at surface. But note, temperatures around 30 below based on the shades of gray here. But let's run the computer model and see how it's working through. Here comes the warmer air. This is moving in for Monday. And you can see a very solid line where the colder air is lurking and ready to move on in. So that's the leading edge of colder air. After all, that's what a cold front is. Here comes the colder air. This will be valid, it looks like, later in the day on Monday. So those temperatures are going to be falling during the day tomorrow. But note, this cold Arctic air has now shifted just a little bit north of Vermont, but it's not hanging around. We actually see another warm-up as we get into the middle to the end of next week. It's kind of short-lived, another drop as we get into actually the end of next week by Thursday and Friday. Another shot of cold air kind of brushes to the north of us across Canada, and then we do get a pretty significant warm-up, really coast to coast, all across the lower 48 United States. Really amazing stuff all through British Columbia. Look at the Chinook effect across the Rockies of Alberta, and really does drive a lot of the coldest air up north into Canada. And we're kind of on that dividing line, which is what we call the baroclinic zone. And this is where you're going to see a lot of these little shortwave troughs and kind of busy weather patterns, dropping a little bit of snow, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's a real nuisance. And this is the reason why, as we're kind of on that edge from cold to warm. And this is the temperature anomalies at surface. So you can see pretty warm conditions out ahead of what is a cold front that's marching southeast of the Great Lakes and into the northeast United States, all the way back into southern Texas. And that warm anomaly then gets erased by the cold front. It gets colder. The coldest air tracks to the north of us across parts of Quebec. And then we start to see a little bit of a warm up again. This is valid along about Wednesday afternoon. So you note here, not too shabby. Roller coaster ride continues, and then here comes more colder air. The second cold air outbreak across parts of southeastern Canada through Quebec takes a track there, and then it starts to warm up again. But note what's going on across the lower 48 United States. Man, we're warming up coast to coast. This is going to be fairly significant. This is valid on the 6th of this month, coming month, December, and then you can see just about coast to coast all the cold air is erased, and a little bit of a pattern change, and this goes out through 10 days. That's pretty significant. This is day 10 right here. Lower 48 United States, a good section of Western Canada. The only real cold air up east of Hudson Bay by day 10. This is valid on the 10th of December. Okay, where's the coldest air reside? Well, it's up in it's up in Siberia. I almost said Quebec. Well, it's pretty cold, but not that cold. Anyway, North America right now, not as cold as Siberia. Always a good sign. Alaska's been sort of cold, sort of warm, really kind of in between. Some coldest air, of course, up around Baffin Island region and back over Greenland. But notable, coldest air up in Siberia. That's probably a good sign until a lot of this becomes cross-polar and probably makes it into a good section of North America, and including the Northeast United States. That's not going to happen until probably after around the 15th of the month. Okay, let's take a look at some of the sea surface temperature anomalies and the teleconnection predictors here. First of all, this is a classic signature of a plus PDO, a Pacific Decadal Oscillation, featuring colder than normal weather across a large section of the sort of central and western Pacific, and then typically a horseshoe of warmer than normal sea surface temperatures that surround this. This is a very strong indicator of a classic plus PDO. The other thing we're looking at is an El Nino. It's in the process of developing. It's a little bit warmer than normal here, but not much. It's been kind of a weak start after coming on very, very strong last spring, and everybody going, my God, we're going to get into a strong El Nino. That could be just absolutely rip the jet stream configurations apart and just change everything. But it's really not much of a controller right now. We're really not seeing a whole lot going on. The only indicator is that we're seeing these westerly currents work up across the region, and that is supplying a little bit of the warmer sea surface temperatures east. But a typical El Nino really starts off Ecuador, Galapagos Islands region, and extends westward, and not the other way around. Really doesn't start this direction and then extend eastward. So this is a little bit of a different an El Nino type. We call this El Nino Molokai, and it is not your classic El Nino. So that's why there's a lot of strange behavior and another conflictor in our weather prognostications. So what is one of the best predictors right now for what's coming, up and coming over large-scale time features? Well, the Madden Julian Oscillation. This is a teleconnection indice that really forms where clusters of thunderstorms really oscillate back and forth from the West Pacific Ocean and then into the Indian Ocean. This affects another configuration of where the jet stream works across, and has a lot to do with what the Arctic Oscillation is doing, and sometimes also coincides well with some of what we call a stratospheric warming event. And these have to do with the Arctic Oscillation, whether it's going to dump enough cold air from the Arctic, etc., etc. So there's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts, a lot of different components. But right now, this is one of the better predictors. Now, this is as of yesterday. We were here. And what's going to end up happening is this is a fairly strong predictor when it gets away from the center here. Note it's not quite as far from here, so this may not be as good a predictor. But phase 1 is real good for snowy nor'easters. A lot of snow in the Northeast, colder than normal across the northern tier United States. Very active weather pattern. You get into phase two, the weather pattern is more active in the west, less so in the Midwest, Great Lakes region, and the east, and we have a tendency to dry out. Phase three is warmer than normal. Typically, a ridge of higher pressure sets up somewhere around here. Phase four, same kind of deal. Much warmer than normal across portions of the northern tier areas of the United States, drier than normal as well. Phase 5, even more amplified. Phase 6, we're into that strong ridge of higher pressure, and typically this features a lot of storminess that works in out of the central part of the United States, taking that typical left turn, lake cutters or panhook lows that then move across the St. Lawrence River Valley. We remain on the warm side. We don't get much in the way of snow. So basically, phases really 2 through 6 are not real good for snow for the northeast United States. And a lot of times in these phase 4, 5, 6, we end up losing snow a lot of times. But we get into phase 7, things start to improve. Cold air supply, maybe not the greatest for snowfall. Phase 8 is real good for our neck of the woods here up in Vermont, and phase 1. So 8 and 1 are our big nor'easter trackers, and that's where we're going to be headed. Notice this is where the modeling shows we go through this warmer than normal period through the first half of December. By the last half of December, ahead of the holidays, we're going to get into these much more stormier tracks, and this is where conditions really do favor some good snowfall. So I'm expecting to lose a lot of snow. A lot of people are going to complain, but just hold on. Once we get into those later phases with the Madden Julian Oscillation teleconnection, that indice is pretty accurate as we get into the winter months, and it looks like this is going to be the main issue here. So I would expect more snow for skiers and snowshoers and cross-country skiing, and also snow preservation as we're going to remain cold. But these phases do switch. They don't hang around all the time. As you can see, this is a kind of an oddball phase that occurred here, so that's the way it's going out. But watch the Madden Julian Oscillation, the MJO. This is going to be a great predictor ahead. Roger Hill, Wuthering Heights Consulting.